Yeah, thank you so much. Please take a seat. We are really honored and pleased to have that very special case in this morning on what we call making the case for Pakistan. And it's not just for Pakistan, it's focusing the session on what role do faith actors play as first responders to immediate crisis, to man-made crisis, humanitarian crisis, and I'm very honored to have on my right-hand side Dr. Sara Safdar. She represents the government of Pakistan. She was the Minister of Religious Affairs in Peshawar and is actually on the committee in the Higher Committee of Education now. Thank you for coming all the way. And she's also a senior advisor in her special capacity to the Pak Mission Society, one of the conveners of our session. Then I'm very honored to have Dr. Heike Henn on my left-hand side here. She's one of the key main negotiators on behalf of the German Federal Ministry of Development Cooperation. And I can say, I think, one of the pushers for the Loss and Damage Fund, if I may say so. And I'm very honored to have her here on my left-hand side on a very short notice, since, as you can imagine, main negotiators in teams of governments have quite a schedule to follow, to say the least. I'm also very honored to have Kamasap on my right-hand side. He is one of the key experts, I would say, from whom I learned a lot about localization, what concretely localization means in a situation of Pakistan, a country that is on the top list of the most affected countries by floods, climate crisis, refugees. As you might all know, it's under the top 10 countries of constant flooding, earthquakes, crisis. In 22 alone, 1/3 of the country was flooded. I come from Germany, where we had in Ahrtal a very small flooding compared to what I've seen there. But it was one of the worst I've seen in my life. And people were displaced, as we just heard from Filippo Grandi. This intersectionality of human crisis, climate crisis, and the refugee crisis, unfortunately, cause each other to a certain extent. And I think we have to realize, and this is what we will discuss today, what's government's response and what's the response of the faith-based actors and the NGOs, civil society. I go on. Next is the CEO, Johannes Peter, of Humedica, one of the main humanitarian implementing agencies in Germany. Strong support by the German government, I may say so, BMZ and Foreign Affairs. And they are the intermediary also to implement big programs on humanitarian relief in Pakistan. Thank you for coming, Johannes. And then we are very honored to have Kekshan Gibran from Pak Mission Society as well. She represents the Business Development Department of the Pak Mission Society. And she was also one of the main conveners and supporters of the LICOI, the young climate activists in Pakistan, the women gatherings, the pre-conferences in Pakistan, making the case for today's COP. And we are very happy to have you because you will represent also young leaders and their demands on what needs to be achieved at COP28. By saying that, let me kick off this session by just thanking you for coming. We will open the floor since we are a group which can interact here in this room. That's the intention of the Faith Pavilion, the first and foremost Faith Pavilion at a COP. Thanks to Dr. Iyad and other people here in the room, we can gather here in this central space where faith actors are in the blue zone for the first time, I think, in the history of 28 COPs. So that's also something to celebrate. Maybe we can give an applause for that. Dr. Sara, let me kick off the session by asking you, according to the situation in Pakistan, now 1 year after the major floods, what is the situation all about? How do you assess the situation, also as senior advisor to Pak Mission Society, but also as a representative who supported government in responding to those amazing crises that we have seen, a really devastating crisis that we have seen. More than 2 million people died in that flood, and I think a lot of displaced. Please give us an insight into the situation in Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you allow me, can I go there? I'll feel better standing.
Okay. But then you are not in the screen. You're not in the screen.
All right.
Please.
All right.
You
Okay.
may
I have to be on the screen. Okay.
You have to be on the screen.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be part of this panel today, representing the government of Pakistan as well as the Park Mission Society, the organization which is working for the betterment in the life of the people. To start with, everybody knows that the Afghan refugees who are living across the border, they had been coming to Pakistan. So referring to the UN commissioner here, he said, when I met him, he said, what is the situation of the Afghan refugees now in Pakistan? And I told him that we are lucky enough that Park Mission Society has taken a step and they are working with the government of Pakistan, with the permission of the government of Pakistan. They are in the field to help the Afghan refugees. If you might be knowing the history that why we have the Afghan refugees in Pakistan. It started in 1980 with the Islamic Revolution in Iran and then the Red Revolution in Russian states. So the Afghan refugees were pushed in Pakistan because of the situation on their right and left. So these displaced people, when they came to Pakistan, they were provided with shelter with an open heart. The first step was to provide them the shelter. Secondly, they were given the health services to the elderly, to those who were suffering from disabilities, not only the physical disabilities, but with their emotional and psychological, the loss of their homes, the loss of their dear ones. Thirdly, the government of Pakistan helped these refugees in providing the education for their children. The government arranged for the schools and the camps, the primary education for the students, and for the young ones who were supposed to join the colleges and the universities. So being an academician, the Higher Education Commission of Pakistan, again the government, they provided special seats for the Afghan refugees. Then the more interesting part was that the government provided the technical skills to the youth who were not educated or those who did not carry the skills to be in their practical life. Here I should mention that the Park Mission Society is lucky enough that in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the province in the north, they have got the permission, the permit to work with the Afghan refugees in the northern areas, as well as in Afghanistan. So, Park Mission Society are helping the women. The group which are targeted are the women, the youth, the senior citizens, as well as the children in the schools. They go for the competition. They go in drawing and writings. I know I'm taking much of your time, but Mr. Commissioner asked me, please carry this message to your government. and his question was, do not disturb the refugees during winters. And from this very platform, I assure UNHCR Commissioner, the United Nations High Commission, that yes, I will carry this message to my government, and Park Mission Society has already got the plans to take care of the refugees during winters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sara, for this insight into the situation in Pakistan. I know you're wearing both hats, Senior Advisor for Park Mission Society and also your government relations, but I think it's important that you carry on this with this message. As Pakistan is, one of the most affected under the 10 main countries affected by climate crisis, we call it the kipping points in the whole COP negotiations, and I think one of those kipping points is geographically exactly in that region, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Dr. Henn, my question to you, what is the response of the German government? You know, especially since we know, and we are in the FACE pavilion, that Germany is part of the country, the two of us including, that causes a lot of CO2 emissions. And we are discussing in this room also the question of climate justice. So what do you think is needed? But also maybe before you come to what is needed, give us some insight in what the government's position is and what the German government is doing to mitigation, adaptation, but also maybe to the very new instrument of loss and damage. That's a lot, huh? I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. I'm only...
Is it working, the mic? Can we have the mic?
Hello?
I think you think. No, it should work, no?
Hello, hello?
Oh, it's not. Can I switch it on? Ah, here we go.
Oh, sorry. Stupid me. Thank you so much. I'm only looking at my mobile because I was told that you are going to be very strict with the time. And you put like more questions to me than, I don't know, I can answer in 3 minutes. But I'm so happy. Thank you so much for having me here in the FACE Pavilion. This is really a very key topic. And I think to be short also and still true to your question, I think as Germany, as the German government at COP28, I think we have to really be real and ambitious on the whole picture, the whole landscape of the topics we have in front of us. So yes, we have to be ambitious on mitigation. And I think when you look at the European NDC and the even more ambitious German NDC, when you look at how our courts are also pushing us in being real in what we do, the government. So we have to deliver, and we have to deliver, and I can honestly say the government tries very hard, even in the now energy crisis we have since almost 2 years due to the Russian aggression in Ukraine. So, but we have to build trust in really getting the emissions down. So, and that is like the first action to prevent loss and damage. But of course, the second step is then adaptation, because we already know that we are not on track. So, and the loss and damages are real. They are real now, and they have been last week. So it's not only something that is coming. You have been speaking about the flood. So we have now also to make sure that the capacities in country and in communities are there for adaptation. And the figures on adaptation finance that have just been presented are not good. On the German side of things, we have an increase in adaptation finance. So I think we still need to do more, but I think our figures are good, but we have to push us and others to increase adaptation finance, increase support to the adaptation plans. So then on loss and damage, yes, we also, it's a question of solidarity and of climate justice, that we have to work with countries to provide support also or strengthen capacities on loss and damage, not only for countries but also for communities on the range of instruments that are needed. So we have been with the V20 very active on the Global Shield. Last year at COP, Pakistan is one of the first Pathfinder countries. We have been very supportive for the fund, and we're so happy the day before yesterday that together with the UAE we could also provide the first 200 million for the fund. So I think on all aspects countries like us have to deliver, but also other countries as well have a role to play. And I think these are my 3 minutes.
Wonderful, and I give you 1.5 minutes more because I need to have one more question to you. Because if you allow me to say, I listened to the launch and to the percussions around the launch, and there were some NGOs, and also like in the Face Pavilion we had some discussions on the Talanoa talks on, when was that, Thursday? On the 30th in Christchurch here in Jabal Ali. And there were some skepticisms around the allocation of the fund with the World Bank. The World Bank is saying we need 6 months to think about the requirements we do have by then implementing the fund. We are following the fund and the increase. Apparently, it's a lot of pledges now done also to 700 million. It's still far away from the 400 billion people speak about, but anyway, those are the figures. But the other question is, what about the governance of the fund? We will ask this colleague just now, next to you, he's a localization expert. How will it be implemented? Are you also looking carefully into those questions of civil society participation? What is your position as Germany on that? Can I ask you that difficult question?
Not difficult.
Okay.
Happy to answer it, but 1.5 minutes. But I will try. So I know the criticism on World Bank. I fully agree that it's not the ideal option, maybe. If they fulfill all the criteria, it's good. But I think many countries in the TC from all groups more or less agreed that it's the best option available. And if you look at the long list of conditions that were set in or now decided on, I mean, 6 months are not a long time to fulfill these conditions. And when we look at the GCF, how many years, 3 or 4, it needed to get slowly up and running, it's maybe not 100% fair. On governance, but we have to see and to push the World Bank. So I fully agree with that. And we have like a 4-step approach now decided. So I think there's ample opportunity to monitor and evaluate and be critical on it. On the governance, this is really a key issue, specifically talking about civil society, if I may say so, also about human rights. Also, yeah, on how we can have stakeholder participation, not only in the governance, I would say, but also strongly in the implementation. So for us, a country-based approach and strong stakeholder participation from governance really into implementation for the German government is important. I must say, when you look at the EU submission within the process, you found a lot in there that you unfortunately cannot find in the final text, because we faced, like others, strong opposition from G77 countries, not from all countries, but from more than we could then convince in the decision.
It clarifies the German position and what you are pushing for, and I'm very happy that you're doing it, if I may say so, as a non-partial moderator. Almost, as you can see. Kamasab, you gave the slogan to this session, Localized Loss and Damage Fund, nothing about us without us. So what do you think about localization? How does it work concretely in Pakistan? I know that you managed a lot, the National Humanitarian Forum. You really convened people and brought them to come up to COP with one voice. We are really excited to have you and happy to listen to you. 5 minutes.
Yeah,
maximum. Let's say 3 and then I give you another 2.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to explain the landscape of, humanitarian architecture in Pakistan. Like I have analyzed 3 major, the networks. Like one is the Charter for Change. For the country level working group of Charter for Change, PMS is hosting it from last 1 year. So we have 12 organizations, including 9 faith-based organizations as a signatory, 9 out of 12 as a signatory, and 21 endorsers, including 5 faith-based organizations, local or national. Then we have NEAR network, that is only South-led network. It is working in 36 countries, including Pakistan. So we have 17 members, but only 1 faith-based organization. That is my organization, Pak Mission Society, and we are convening NEAR network as well for next 3 years. Then we have START network with 54 members from Pakistan, including 10 faith-based organizations, but majorly they are international organizations. Very few, maybe 25% of those will be faith-based organizations. With this landscape, the role of faith actors is very, vigilant to how they perform and how they work within the humanitarian response system, and being the frontliners in any crisis. I would say that we need to work on these lines, like we need to adopt the people first approach for climate financing, and I would recommend that it must be channelized through local actors, and it must be fair, equitable and inclusive. And likewise, the approach for financing must follow the principle of leave no one behind, because with this approach, we can only ensure the inclusion of faith actors being the frontliners, and ensuring their inclusion across the board, not only at the participation level, but also at the decision level and then the implementation level as well. Then we also need to invest in adaptation, resilience, anticipation and early action, so that losses can be minimized for the communities when any type of climate hit, due to the loss and damage. Then the operationalization of loss and damage should be in a way that truly meets the needs of those people who are being affected by the climate change and disasters. I have only 2 points. One is the national, institutional and legal frameworks, whichever we have. Like we have National Action Plan 2023 that is just announced by and produced by the government in 2023. We need to decentralize it because it's a national level plan. So we need to decentralize it at the provincial level and at the district level, so that the faith-based actors could be involved, authorities, local authorities, and indigenous people should be involved in those plans, so that it can be implemented in a more efficient and in more efficient way. And likewise, we don't have any national level localization framework, because after the grand bargain, still we are struggling. And if we want to measure where we are now and where we want to go, we need to first finalize that this is the national localization framework, and on those, on the steps of those, pathways, or we can say that the direction, a strategic direction, then we can say that no, after 5 years or 3 years or by 2030, we have achieved so far, and we need to work more on these lines. So these are some of the thoughts from localization perspective from Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very good strategy, those 7 points. But I know the Charter of Change. I know that even Humedica will speak next, is one of the signatories from the German side. It's a very ambitious plan, the Charter for Change. NGOs, FBOs are committing to give figures on what is localized, what is implemented on a yearly basis. And if they don't give it in 2 years, they are getting out of the Charter. So it's a quite ambitious civil society program. And I think it has impact already in the discussions here in COP, what I see in some of the sessions. I'm always very hot and interested in knowing how do you do it? Because you say the government has no localization strategy. You say it's decentralized to a certain extent on province level. But now, what is Pak Mission Society as a lobby organization as an advocate for localization, doing concretely in getting this localization done? Because looking at the global figures, we know that only out of the ambitions of the first World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul, which I was privileged to attend, only 1.5% is really localized out of funding. So we are far away from the 25% that we wanted to localize in 2015. How is Pakistan making a difference? 1 minute.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So I think at the donor level, like USAID has designed their localization policy. Likewise, the German government has finalized and they have designed. So now it comes to, the local actors, that how they align their priorities with the donors. And likewise, the country level teams are, we can say that the management of the intermediary or INGOs, they need to also understand that how they can ensure the participation of local actors and they can channelize more funding through the local actors. And likewise, my colleague will be sharing the more on the study that we have designed, we have conducted, and it has clearly mentioned that most of the organizations we have, discussed and we have interviewed and assessed, they have the capacity in terms of financial management, in terms of coordination with the local, provincial and national governments, and they have, implemented a huge number of projects and with the, heavy magnitude of financial management, they have implemented already and they are implementing. So it means the capacity is not the issue with all the faith-based actors. So we need to understand that which are the actors who can absorb the funds, who can implement, who have the relationship and trust with the grassroots communities, and who are working from long time. So we need to understand which organizations are working at the grassroots level. They have the coordination mechanisms with the government, and we need to promote those organizations so that we can achieve whatever we have committed during the grant bargain, and now we are also in it's 2.0, then it's 3.0. So we need to, not only, we need to honor our commitments and we need to go for the actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think this is an applause. I don't want you to rest only on your phones. I hope you listened to what he said. There is a strong commitment in really networking and making the case. We have the CEO of Pak Mission here with us, Adil. I think that commitment was outstanding and it made a big difference, if I may say so, as an independent consultant to this process of localization in Pakistan, which really convinced me. But let's go to Humedica as an intermediary, channeling a lot of German funding also to this crisis and in the relief programs. But Kamas spoke a lot about the reliability, accountability, due diligence, all those requirements, donor requirements, which you also stand for in your accountability approaches. What is Humedica doing on pushing the localization agenda?
I would like to take this opportunity first to express my high esteem and appreciation for the collaboration we have with our local partners, but also very much supported by the German government through BMZ, the Ministry for Economic Collaboration and Development, and also the German Federal Foreign Office. And I think my experience and our experience is that when we talk, there is real listening and there is action upon what we share. And even as we are not experienced in such processes, so for us it's the first time that we are actually participating in such an event, that you have joined us and come, that's real joy. Because you have a lot to do and it was hard for me. I persevered and there's a certain success in now sitting with you, but I really appreciate it. And it reminds me of a time where I actually lived in Cairo, and I didn't really live in the expat bubble, but I lived in an area where only Egyptians lived, and I learned Arabic with my bawab. And it was an amazing time because through him I also had a great connection to visit mosques and experience mosques and places of faith as places where people come together and talk exchange ideas. They even had soccer places there, and also in the churches, it's real places of community. And I see this faith pavilion as such a place, and I'm really honored that people from all faith or whatever come together here and talk in this space. So I would like to also honor this space and thank you for listening to us. So with regards to localization, often when we discuss our claims, demands, our emotions or feelings, or what deriving from those we would like to see or expect, we are faced with realities. My realities sometimes is the lack of care for children, so I have to take care for my children while working because my wife is also working. Likewise, in politics, and I think this is a great achievement of COP, that all the parties come together, but we are faced with realities. So looking at due diligence and all the compliance requirements, I think first it's important that we recognize that they are there and they are important. Those criteria are important. I sometimes remind myself when thinking about those challenges that I'm a taxpayer. And I also give donations, so I should respect those things, but then discuss and see how can they be overcome. And there, looking at our collaboration with many local organizations, I can also say that there really is support for sharing capacity. And it's not for no reason that I say sharing capacity, because my experience as or working with Humedica, and I have to share here that Humedica is also a group of many volunteers that are professionally trained and also deploy, for instance, with the Emergency Medical Teams Initiative of WHO. So there are real relationships of people. There are real growing relationships of people of different countries that build bridges, which we built upon. And through those, there's a lot of capacity sharing happening. And why I say sharing is because it is a real sharing. It is not just a giving. I and we learn so much, even from the weaknesses of ourselves, just having them reflected in the face of talking to our counterparts. And even, I think when we are bold enough to see our own mistakes in whatever context, they become steps on staircases that lead up. And from there, we can even see the broader context. And I think this is really what we're experiencing, because we learn so much from our partners. And what I take home from the interaction which I have with my colleagues from Pakistan is that also the way how my colleagues and how we work together really needs to grow, in how far we also in physical spaces meet and interact and discuss. And in many projects, we have the German ministries that support our projects. They really allocate funds and expertise to share expertise with our local partners. And in some of the projects we are currently doing, we see really how this bears fruit, which then will help again that local actors can really implement what we are asking for, most locally led with faith actors, the most local possible. And I think this is also a backbone that this system needs. So we require it, but we also build it, and we get the support for this. So this is really a step we can build on.
Thank you. Almost made it in time. Thank you. Kekshan, I know that now the timer is not going off. What's wrong? There. Thank you. I know that you worked hard to make the case for COP28, not just for Pakistan, but for the most vulnerable. And you came up with 4 major demands. We want to show them on the screen, but I want to give you the floor for the 3 minutes and then open for the last 5 minutes on some questions from the plenary, because you are all here and you want to interact, I know. Okay, I see you already. 3 minutes, Kekshan, I'm sorry. Can we have the slide, please?
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm representing Pakistan, and I'm wearing the color of my national flag, white and green, and also wearing it with black, showing the vulnerability of our country when it comes to the climate-induced disasters. All of you sitting here, ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine that if you are living in a country where 63% of the population belongs to the young people, and in which 48% belongs to women. And out of 48% of women, only 8% of women contributes in the economic factors. The country where the economy is dwindling, where the politics is crumbling, and where the societies are evolving and struggling. What if the climate disasters every year, the floods, the heat waves, the gulfs, the landsliding, taken away and snatch all the lives and livelihoods of the people living under the poverty line? In Pakistan, the majority of the people lives under the poverty line and earns only $3 a day. Loss and damage, if we talk only about the flood 2022 alone, there was a loss and damage of 30 billion USD. And it has affected 33 million people. So for people of Pakistan, the loss and damage is not only a negotiation point for 12 days of COP. It's really a hope for the future. It's a hope for those who have lost their homes. You can imagine if one can lose their home, what will be the feeling and that traumatic feeling for the future. It will be the hope for those who have lost their livelihoods. It's a hope for those who are really tired now of facing the climate-induced disasters year by year. So while we are in the COP and we have very high hopes from the Loss and Damage Fund, and we came to know about the very interesting pledges which are coming up from different countries, but still the question is, I want to ask everyone sitting here, that you really think what is the topic of today's conversation, that is that Loss and Damage Fund is properly coordinated and equitable? Maybe some says yes, some says no, and some says maybe. But the question is, we talk about governments, we talk about countries, but we really talk about the people who really affects from that particular disasters. So we are bringing forth one of the recommendations, which is also the slogan of this event, that nothing about us without us. You cannot take decisions without including the local faith actors about their self, because they are historically being the first one who respond these disasters everywhere. But when it comes to the funds, when it comes to the adaptation, they're already always at the vulnerable side. Just in few seconds, I just want to elaborate that we have conducted the ALCOI, Local Conference of Youth, and we have also conducted one research with the 16 faith-based actors working tremendously for the humanitarian assistance of our country. And we came to know that there are 4 big gaps existing in the whole system, and I want to highlight them. The first one is it is related to the power structures. Power structures are so bureaucratic that it's find a little space for the vulnerable community, for the women organizations, for the youth organizations, and for the faith actors to come forward. The second one is the perception dilemmas that really pitch us forward, not going us forward, but take us behind. And I think that question of leaving no one behind is not an applicable thing for Pakistan, because there are a number of people who are behind since so far. The third one is that the preparedness barrier. It's easy to say that you have to adopt, you have to be resilient, but that resilience and adaptation requires fund. And if that funds are not channelized to the right stakeholders, so I think I just want to end my part by raising 4 demands. That is first, the localization of loss and damage fund. The second is mainstreaming of the voices of the faith-based actors at the policy level, not just in the events and shows. The third one, nothing about us without us. And the fourth one, that climate financing for improving the adaptation capacity of the local faith actors. We believe that we are not so far late. Time is now. It's a time to turn our ambitions into actions and our promises into progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This was a very conducive positioning of Pak Mission Society and all your networks, because you're not just speaking for Pak Mission Society, you convened the LICOI. I'm allowing 2 questions to the panel. I have 2 hands up here already. If you agree, Reverend, we start with the lady. Is it okay?
Yes. Thank you so much. My question is about the structure of the Loss and Damage Fund in terms of trying to improve the localization agenda. I hear that the fund is going to be administered again through World Bank. Taking from the case study of FLOCA that was administered by the World Bank, I have to say that was a failure because the structure was too complicated for grassroots communities to access the same funds. So if we are to do something different, how can we make sure that there are measures in there that make it easy for grassroots communities to access these funds, so that we can say we are putting our best foot forward in terms of trying to improve adaptation at the local level? Thank you. Oh, sorry, my name is Mary Nwara and I work for Green Faith, and the question goes to Ma'am over here. Thank you.
My name is Sean. I'm with the Episcopal Church of the United States. My question is perhaps a bit more theological in nature, and it's directed to our friends at PAC Mission. How can those of us who are faith leaders or members of FBOs in the developed world be most supportive of people in crisis in the face of non-economic losses and damages, such as displacement from ancestral homes, the nature of being a refugee or a stranger, or the loss of loved ones and death?
And that question goes to PAC Mission Society, I guess. Okay, Madame Hen, what's the answer? Again, the World Bank.
Yeah, thank you very much. But the bigger question, how I understood it, is how to make it accessible, the fund for local communities, for vulnerable communities, and what is the best setup. From my perspective, the hosting at the World Bank is like a blank space. It's now on the board, the incoming board, to really design the fund. So regarding governance, regarding strategies, what are the instruments, so on and so forth, there is nothing that is coming and is imposed by the World Bank. It really depends on the willingness of all participants in the board to shape the fund accordingly. And for us, if we would be in the board, I don't know, it would be something that we care about and would put into it. I think we have to be always honest, and governments represented in a board or in the process are not always in favor of strong participation of local communities. This is something that will be part of the discussions in the board as well. From my perspective, that might be a more difficult case than that the World Bank is the host. So we have to see how in the governance, as I said, but in the stakeholder participation, but really down to implementation and access regarding the requirements, we can be as accessible as possible. And I hear that many civil society actors are happy or more happy or less unhappy with the small grants program in Jeff from UNDP. So this is a bit something that we will certainly look at, if that is still the case, that is more accessible. Thank you.
The last question goes to PAC Mission Society. We start with Kekshan and then Dr. Sarah. 1 minute to close the session.
With respect to the participation of local faith actors in what we call the non-economic losses, one of the perspectives is that already the local faith actors are contributing in the non-economic losses. They are providing the hope because they are at ground. They are providing them the joy and prosperity dreams. So I think they're playing a very strong role there. But when it comes to their economic contribution, the role that needs to be strengthened, for which we are striving for, and we are building the case for them. Because when we have made the research, it was the conclusion of the research that there is a lot of capacity gaps existing at the hands of the local faith actors. And if we really want to make the case for them for their economic contribution as well as their non-economic contribution, we have to work with them. We have to build that localization agenda and strengthen them at ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sarah, for closing.
Sure. Thank you very much, Julie. Well, today's session had been very productive, conveying the exact situation of Pakistan, facing the disasters, as well as the extending hands to help the people in need. Dr. Hen, Mr. Peter, Mr. Uli, Ms. Keksha, and Mr. Kama. It had been an honor to be part of this panel when we tried to bring out the essence of this COP28 with the faith leaders. When we look at the faith leaders and their contribution, I would like to mention that though in Pakistan we have limited resources, in many ways we are lacking resources, but an effort is always made to make use of those resources in a positive way. I'm grateful to humedica. I'm grateful to the government of Pakistan. And above all that, I'm grateful to Pak Mission Society for bringing all the faith actors together. And I must mention here that Pakistan Council of World Religions is a very active partner of Pak Mission Society. Along with that, Church stands there and they contribute a lot. So ladies and gentlemen, you have known the situation that Pakistan is among one of the 10 top countries who are facing the disaster every now and then, in one way or the other, either man-made disasters or the natural disasters. But I would like here to quote a few things. My message to my young generation: inspire action and protect future. Future of the world, our world, for the generations to come. And secondly, let us pledge today, let us join hands to honor and save our Mother Earth from harming it. Faith organizations, I always say, should be having the faithful approach with the faithful members. And we should be grateful to our faith organizations there who are in coordination with Pak Mission Society. So, Pakistan Zindabad. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. And I think we have stolen 10 minutes already from the next session. So we will quickly move on to the next session. Thank you to the hosts.